All right, I get it. It's all about winning games, right? It's not about winning the press conference. But one of us around here is want to assign a win-loss record before regular season games even start in September. There is such a thing as winning the off-season, says yours truly. And there is something.
And Rex Ryan, he said that too.
It's true. That's why we give out the Rex Ryan Award. But that's months down the road at the end of the off-season.
Okay.
I'd say Mike LaFleur right now is 1-0 based on winning the press conference. Who's with me on Cardinals Underground? Paul Calvisi, Dani, Sureck, Darren Urban.
I just know we have something else to talk about, thank goodness.
And write about, which you'll do simultaneously and multitask
we can't get your undivided attention.
You are. I mean, I'm getting this ready to write my notes, so as soon as this is over, we can get out the description and post this fine podcast.
We're back on video this week, folks.
Okay, speed round off the top. Initial takeaways. Everyone go. We'll just sort of stick and move, staccato, big takeaways. What hit you first and hit you hardest?
Authenticity is the word that comes to mind. Look, it's the first press conference. You can't ask everything. You're not going to get all of the answers, mostly because LaFleur doesn't even have a staff at the moment. There weren't a lot of cookie-cutter answers, and that's something that's popular around the league, and I appreciated what felt really authentic and what he's looking for and what his role is going to be. We learned a lot of things. One of the big takeaways is that LaFleur is going to call plays for the offense, something he didn't do in LA but missed, and learned a lot from Sean McVay, something that he did do as an offensive coordinator at his previous stop in New York with the Jets. And there were a lot of players and coaches in attendance. I mean, a long list, but off the top, I mean, Paris Johnson Jr. was there, Mack Wilson Sr., Michael Wilson, Will Johnson, and that was nice to see them support their head coach and buy into this new era with the Cardinals. I appreciated, too, that you got some details out of some of the answers, and when talking about play calling and continuing with that example of something that LaFleur has learned from McVay and from Kyle Shanahan, he comes from both coaching trees, is the importance of getting the play call out quickly and everybody being clean and sharp and on the same page. And again, that might not seem like a crazy detail, but the fact that he shared it, I thought it was a really good first impression.
Going off of what Dani said real quick, like Mack Wilson flew in. He heard about when the press conference was and he flew in from Texas. So that's impressive. And again, not all the players are going to be here. People had other things going on. They had previous commitments. I don't think you look down on players that weren't here as much as you praise the ones that were, and he did note that. I think authenticity is definitely something that I noticed with this guy. He's not super tall. I noticed that. Now maybe I'm a little bit taller, so but I like, despite that, he did command the room, I thought. And you think a little bit about a guy who hasn't done this before, who is on the younger side. I mean, for us especially, Paul.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, just checking. I know he's older than you, Dani. But when you heard him, you got the feeling like, okay, I could see this guy in front of an NFL team telling them what to do. And that was something that I wanted to see. I don't know if
don't dismiss that.
No.
Because you have to carry the room.
Yes.
You have to generate buy-in. You have to generate believability, credibility from a bunch of alpha males. We're wondering, what is this guy doing in that position leading this locker room? You have to be, and without any head coaching experience on his resume at any level, it was a valid question.
No, and I think him being able to do that, him making the point, like I'm paraphrasing, but I can't wait to get started, and it's because of you guys talking to the guys in the back of the room, the players that showed up at the press conference. I like the vibe, and I will say, and again, we don't know anything. We don't know what any of this is going to look like. We don't know what his coaching staff's going to look like. We don't know what this is going to look like on the field. I did like the idea when he was talking about, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, I'm not going to say I'm the right choice. I hope I'm the right choice. I like that self-awareness. I like that he's not coming in, oh, Buddy Ryan, you got a winner in town, or Denny Green tapping the the plasterboard with all the records
Right.
of active head coaches.
Yes. Yeah.
You remember that back in the day, Paul?
And, that was before Google. Google
Yes.
me. Instead of Google me, it was, just post your resume.
Here, we had the media relations staff put together this fine presentation.
Here's the hard copy of my resume.
I like that there was that self-awareness, but I like there was a confidence there that, okay, he may be hoping that he's the right guy, but down deep he is the right guy, or that he thinks he's the right guy. And I'll be honest, the other thing I really liked, I loved the idea that he's got a brother who's an NFL head coach that was willing to come all the way out to Arizona to be part of this. Now, is Matt LaFleur in the middle of a horrific winter in Green Bay in that part of the country? Yes.
Does he have plans to go to the Phoenix Open? According to his brother, Mike LaFleur, yes.
Okay.
Who then had a self-deprecating joke. My brother only came cross-country to go to the Phoenix Open.
And it's been a grind, I'm sure, for Matt LaFleur even after the season. He's had a lot of coaching changes on his staff already. He's probably been hip deep in his own work that he has to get done. So getting a reprieve like that. But I like the fact that he has that support from his brother. I mean, we will see how this goes. But obviously, as you can hear in our voices, it feels after day one something that we would all like to see how it plays out for sure.
Yes, it was, the front row and the back row were impressive. Front row, all his family, including his big brother, who he told us on the radio side. We asked him, what was the first call you made after you accepted the gig? He said his brother. And then his brother said, well, we should, do sort of a group family call with the folks. And so that was a good moment right there. But Mike said in the radio interview that even though Matt and his parents and all the family and kids and wife, everyone was in the front row, he kept looking at the back row, all the players. And he made mention of that more than once, especially in regards to Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. And it sounds like the one thing he's learned from those two guys, it's always about the players. Make sure it's about the players. We're here to serve and cater to the players.
Now, I would like to put a caveat on that. That was Jonathan Gannon, 2AT. From the first day, it's about the players. We're here to serve the players. We've heard that before. Now, maybe in different words, but we've heard that before. I'm not saying that takes anything away from Mike LaFleur, but again, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's anything groundbreaking or he's redefining the head coaching gig. I mean, obviously, and a lot of the younger head coaches, and Jonathan Gannon is one of those. He was 40 years of age when he got the gig. They sort of have a same philosophy, same mantra. I will say it was noteworthy to me, his story about COVID in the 2020 season. And what's remarkable, and I wanted to ask him about this in the radio interview and I couldn't. He was on
Get with it, Paul.
He was on the staff with Shanahan in the 20 season, obviously, because we'll get to this. That year began with a September game in Santa Clara when they had the NorCal wildfires. You couldn't see beyond the upper deck at Levi's Stadium. We're there, and it's COVID, and so there's nobody in the stands.
We shared a booth, Paul.
Yes, and we were one of, two of 200 people in the stadium. You couldn't even see the planes that were flying overhead about 500 feet above the stadium. There was so much smoke from the NorCal wildfires. I mean, they were like this close to not even be able to play the game because of the air quality. But he cited the end of the season, the last 6 weeks spent by the 49ers at State Farm Stadium, practicing, and then in Renaissance Hotel across the street, and then all the accolades he gave Michael Bidwell and the organization for, quote, making it feel like home. And he had basically a premonition that, this feels right. And that was interesting.
Well, that was one of two stories along that same line. The second was, again, with the wildfires, when the Rams were set to host the Vikings in a wild card game and they weren't able to have that game at SoFi Stadium, and it was played at State Farm Stadium. And that was something that LaFleur touched on, was he was in this building, and that was the moment he told his wife, I'm going to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals someday. He manifested it.
Talk about speaking it into existence. There was another line, I went back and listened to it to make sure I heard it correctly. There was another line where he said, as they were game planning for the Vikings, and they jack-stomped the Vikings, and that's where they sacked Sam Darnold 9 times in that game, and it was a dominant playoff win. Turns out that there was something else going on beyond just football. That was a team playing for its city because the wildfires were going on. Guys who didn't know if they'd have a home when they returned off the plane, planes that were sent by the Arizona Cardinals to bring not only the players but families. Guys like Rob Havenstein brought his dogs. And you think that's funny? Well, no, he didn't know if his house was going to make it. What do I do with my pets? I'm a single guy. So he brought his dogs with them. But what was interesting is when he was telling that story, there was a quick aside that when they were game planning, and then when they got on the game field pregame, he said to Sean McVay, oh boy, Vikings are in trouble. Like they could sense it. They could feel it in the team. They were that confident in the game plan. And to me, it's one thing to know all about McVay and Shanahan and their schemes, but to be in the trenches with those guys for a combined 7 years, know how they game plan. Know how they game plan against the NFC West. What did Sean McVay think of Mike Macdonald? What were the game plans when they ripped the Seahawks for 3.5 quarters 2 games ago? Those are things I think are invaluable to the Arizona Cardinals.
Adaptability. That was a talking point when talking about the Rams and Sean McVay, how he had evolved his offense and looked different this year. That's something that we heard throughout, the season from national reports as well is the growth of the Rams. And then you look at Kyle Shanahan, and the three of us talk about it whenever the Cardinals play the 49ers. It doesn't matter who they have on the field. The scheme is so good, and it is so well installed that they're able to continue to have success regardless of how far they're going down the depth chart. Those are things that are intangible that Mike LaFleur has learned over the years. 7 years with those two, and he's spent 3 of the last 3 in LA as an offensive coordinator going up against this Cardinals defense. So he does have some inside knowledge, and it's just a matter of transferring those qualities and those traits as a head coach here to Arizona, regardless of personnel.
I want to go back to something else you just mentioned. Well, you guys were both mentioning the premonition of becoming a Cardinals head coach, and I guess this could have been a retrofitted story, but I don't know why he would just make something like that up after he got hired here. So I'm assuming it to be true, clearly. And then if that's true, it feels it kind of makes me smile a little bit with all the teeth gnashing about, oh my God, if you go talk to Clint Kubiak in this thing, Mike LaFleur might not take your job. Because it really sounds silly in the reflection of this story that he told.
Well, and at that point too, the reality is there were 2 jobs open, Cardinals and Raiders, and LaFleur wasn't on the radar of the Raiders. So at that point,
you could make the argument, and I don't want to go back in time because the hire's been made and we're moving on. But you could make the argument that he could have gone back to the Rams and seen what happened. But he'd already been there 3 years, and again at some point, you want to move on. And I work with a lot of young people that want to keep moving up the ladder. And so I'm guessing at almost 39, he probably wants to move up the ladder.
Why'd you look at me?
I looked at you at the end. I was waiting for you to say something. It's your turn
I think
to
you
talk.
said it all.
Okay. We're not sort of like the coach himself. We're not naming names. Is that what you're saying? So here's my question. I almost forgot the question I was going to bring up was the question I asked, and I almost forgot about it. But the question I asked him in the press conference, my one little bit of a contribution, was asked him about how much he's looking forward to calling plays again. How confident is he? How comfortable is he? And honestly, if you go back and listen to it, I didn't even finish my question. He wanted that question.
Yeah, he wanted it.
Because he wants to call plays. You can tell. Right. He wants to get back. He enjoys it a lot.
He was saying that's what he really feels in the game when you're calling plays.
Well, he talked about missing it. And it was funny because Cam Cox from Channel 12 did a 2-part question. One is directly he said, are you going to call plays? And then he asked the other thing. And before Cam Cox finished his second part of the question, which was, I think it was about family or something.
Yeah.
LaFleur was up there interrupting him saying, yeah, I'm going to call plays. And then Cam Cox finished, and then Mike LaFleur wanted to make sure, hey, just so everybody heard, I'm calling plays.
Right. Well, and I was sitting next to Cam, and I grabbed the mic. And I'm like, okay, give me this. And that's when I asked the question. Because I'm like, okay. Because you could tell
you didn't even ask Mike Helm if you could have the mic?
I looked at Mike. Okay, we made eye contact.
There's a lot of mics being thrown around.
There is a lot of mics.
There's MIKE. There was authorization from the guy handling the MIKEs for me to grab the MIC and then, boom, ask the follow-up question because I was very curious about that. Because you could tell he sort of inched forward in his seat. And to me, that's great news. I mean, already the thing I'm most curious to find out about the Cardinals' new head coach is, okay, what does it look like coming off the play sheet and into the huddle and up to the line of scrimmage? Because if it is so important to him, he said when he was with the 49ers that Shanahan and him would marvel at how clean the operation looked by Sean McVay. And so yet another instance where they're setting the standard.
I saw, it was funny, he talked about the only bad play is a late play. The only bad play call is a late play call. And I was fortunate enough, and okay, whatever, name dropping, but I was fortunate enough before the press conference, I was talking to Kurt Warner, talking about some stuff, and Matt LaFleur happened to come up and engaged us in conversation. And it struck me that that's what Mike said, because Matt LaFleur said something along the same lines to Kurt while we were talking about the late play call. And I think I had just heard it from something else. And it's like, you can talk all day about whether a play is good or bad. And sometimes it has to do with the result of the play rather than if it was actually the right play to call. But where you really get sideways is if you let your offense get too deep into the play clock before you let them know what's going on. And I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Tone. That was also mentioned by LaFleur on wanting to call plays and the tone and the communication with the quarterback. That's something that's important for him to spearhead.
Did Kurt share with Matt LaFleur his story of getting cut by the Green Bay Packers? Did Kurt Warner ever share that story as Darren ignores me and finishes?
Divided attention.
Story on azcardinals.com.
Did he ever share the story about, well...
No, we won't tell
Kurt
that.
talked about it, yeah.
I'll just say this much. Don't dismiss getting out of the huddle and getting up to the line of scrimmage with time on the play clock, because the regime before Jonathan Gannon, that was a constant issue.
Yeah.
Having to burn timeouts.
There were a lot of timeouts burned in the first half, early in the second half, because of that very issue. And think of, especially the earlier days with Jared Goff when he's a very young quarterback. Think of how the Rams ran their offense. They purposely would break the huddle as quick as possible and or just get up to the line of scrimmage in a sugar huddle or go up-tempo because they wanted Sean McVay to be able to talk through the ear holes and into the helmet of Jared Goff as to what, okay, it's cover two, throw the out. And so I'm curious to see, especially if the Cardinals have a young quarterback, is that something that Mike LaFleur might engage in as well. So play calling, that's going to be his domain. Now the big question, obviously, well, there's two of them. There's the quarterback question. That's going to continue. But the front burner question now, I would say, is defensive coordinator. And obviously the Titans made a hire in Gus Bradley, right?
Yes. Before we get into the defensive coordinator, because this is probably a shorter topic, but I'm curious, will there be an offensive coordinator? When Cliff was here and calling plays, he didn't have an offensive coordinator.
I asked that question in a sit-down interview. Thank you very much. And
what answer did you get, Dani?
I had asked about the qualities, and he said he'll have an offensive coordinator, somebody who, when he has to take over other aspects of being a head coach, that the train is not getting off tracks, and you have an offensive coordinator who can maintain the speed of that progression. And about a defensive coordinator, not specifically hiring someone based off their schemes, but who can get the most out of the players that they have.
Before we get to DC, I will say that I heard Sean McVay, when asked about LaFleur now that he's leaving, he basically talked about how, and if you recall correctly, I want to say McVay got sick. He got sick on a weekend right before a game, and he basically said that
it was the Week 14 game against the Cardinals here.
And LaFleur had to run all the Saturday stuff, and
yep.
I think he ended up making the announcement of the plays into the quarterback so that the cadence, I forget what it was, but LaFleur took a heavier role that week in the offense.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Because I wanted to go back to Week 14, which ended up being a lopsided loss by the Cardinals against the Rams team. If you remember, it scored 35 straight points. Went 32 straight plays without ever reaching third down. It was a dominant offensive performance by the Rams.
Is this where you're getting to the DC?
This is where I'm going to get into the DC. But before we get there, if I'm Monty Ossenfort and I'm Michael Bidwill and I'm sitting up in the owner's booth, that's the first time I start talking to each other about if we're making a move, Mike LaFleur is on our list. Because as we found out later, he called a lot of those plays, and it was an absolute schooling and clinic by the Rams offensively in that game. Now, this is where the DC comes in. That was also the one game where Nick Rawls said he regretted the game plan. Cardinals came out on dime. And if you go back and look, Matthew Stafford started 1 of 4, 2 of 6 passing, and then they made an adjustment. And they ran 40 or more snaps in 13 personnel, 3 tight ends. And they said, you're going to go light out there? We're going to go heavy. And the Cardinals never adjusted. They never did anything in response until it was too late. And so now, okay, who is the defensive coordinator? Gus Bradley's under contract. Ian Rappaport from the Super Bowl earlier today threw out the name Wink Martindale, longtime Giants defensive coordinator who recently has been with Michigan.
Very talented game show host.
No, his real name is Don Martindale, but it's a joke. They call him Wink because of the game show host.
Oh, that's disappointing.
So just a little background
I watched a lot of Wink Martindale growing up.
Yeah.
Sick at school, you know.
Bob Barker.
He's another one. I don't think he's a very good defensive coordinator, though, Bob Barker. Well, he's no longer with us, so he definitely wouldn't be a very good
He had a good heart. He had a good straight right, though. Just ask
That's
Happy
true.
Gilmore.
We have driven right off the road.
Is this still a football podcast?
You got
Let me
anything
know.
you want to throw in here, Dani?
I mean, I could. I'll wait till the end. I don't want to completely throw Paul off.
No. So, but I don't have anything else as far as the defensive coordinator goes.
Well, you mentioned Gus Bradley. There was a lot of reporting that the Cardinals were in on him before he took the job with the Titans. One of the things that I was interested in on the reporting that even though Gus Bradley chose to go with Robert Saleh and the Titans, was that allegedly not only would Gus Bradley have been calling the defensive plays here in Arizona, which he will not do in Tennessee because Robert Saleh is going to do it, but apparently the Cardinals offered more money.
Wow.
So
Wow.
and obviously you're disappointed you can't get a guy that you're looking for, reportedly. But I will say, for a lot of people that have brought up, like, what are the Cardinals willing to spend in terms of assistant coaches? Like, I think that's a good sign, right?
No doubt. No doubt. If Gus Bradley has designs on being a head coach again, maybe he's just thinking, all right, where do I have a better chance to win? Maybe he looks at the division, Shanahan, McVay, and the Seahawks, and you're like, wow, do I really want to put my name on the defense going against those teams 6 times a year versus the AFC South, right? So I don't know. That's the first time I heard that. That's my initial reaction to that. But yeah, that is a huge question right now. And how vital, if at all, is to get ideally a defensive coordinator who maybe was a former NFL head coach. Is there going to be anyone who could be a go-to person with a lot of experience for first-year head coach Mike LaFleur?
Well, I did ask a question of whether in the press conference, I asked whether he needed coordinators with some experience. Is that something you're targeting? And he basically said no. He didn't rule it out, obviously, but his point was like, I'm not going to rule out a good candidate just because of that aspect.
It was also interesting in the radio interview. He talked about, and this is something him and McVay would discuss every offseason, look, we got to stay ahead. Schematically, if you don't stay ahead, if you don't evolve, if you don't improve every offseason, it's over, quote unquote. That was Mike LaFleur. And you know what? It makes sense. Rams, how many times do your offensive coaches say every week they are watching Sean McVay's film because of the innovation? What is he busting out this week? And Cliff Kingsbury used to rave about it. In addition to watching a Hugh Freeze with Liberty, Cliff would watch all these crazy, offensive minds from didn't matter what level of football. But that's intriguing as well, especially as a younger guy who studied under Shanahan and McVay. I think you could argue, this is subjective, no facts, just an observation, but did the Cardinals offense in 2025 evolve? If you remember the first month of the season when the run game, albeit still mostly healthy in terms of offensive linemen and running backs, wasn't getting traction. It didn't look the same. Didn't have the same effectiveness. Did the opposition adjust? Did you need to adjust to the adjustment? And you never did.
You could argue later in the season they did because they had no choice. They were down to their 5th and 6th running backs. So the Cardinals did adjust to become a pass-first offense. Again, though, that was a decimated offensive line, a decimated running backs room, playing with backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett, and thankfully Michael Wilson popped off and you got Trey McBride opposite of him as the number 1 tight end in the NFL. That is a good point, though, is, learning from McVay, someone who is known for being innovative and adapting. And those are important lessons to learn as you come up in your career. And that's something that LaFleur's learned. Shanahan is the same way. I mean, it doesn't matter who he has on the field. 49ers are a tough team to go against. So those are things that you hope that can be transferred from what LaFleur's learned over the years now in charge.
Because I'm a glutton for punishment. I like to challenge AQ and talk offensive line as Paulie Pencilneck, and I lose. I lose consistently. But, I like to rile him up a little bit, poke the bear. And more than once this past season, I said, wait a minute. On paper, look at the Rams' offensive line. They got Kevin Dotson at right guard, and what else? Niners have Trent Williams at left tackle. Name one other guy. Now, AQ Shipley makes a living on offensive line. He names every guy. But no one else could name a guy on those 2 offensive lines. My point is that something was happening with the scheme, with the coaching, with those 2 teams. The Rams had 2 running backs who combined for nearly 2,000 rushing yards, in Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. Blake Corum was a day 2 pick, a day 3 pick. Kyren Williams was a day 2 pick once upon a time. Now, he's been a second-team All-Pro a couple of times. Shout out to Les Snead. That was a heck of a draft pick once upon a time by the Rams. But, again, to me, the Niners and the Rams, and we know this better than anyone because we play them twice a year, really, to me, their offenses start with a really potent run game. For everything they do in the pass game, it's all set up by play action and everything else. And it's not like they have a ton of weapons in the run game, the Rams in particular, to me, but they always find a way to average 5 yards a carry whenever you play them. So I guess that's my point of saying I am curious, in addition to everything else, what Mike LaFleur is going to do with the run game, because who knows who's going to be toting the rock this year.
Well, AQ Shipley has been on record saying that scheme can do as much for a run game as the offensive line itself. And we've talked a lot about whether the offensive line is going to be overhauled and who's going to be in there. And I do think they're going to address that. I don't think there's any question about it. But what does that mean? Again, some of this is going to be hard to get at right now because we don't know who the offensive line coach is going to be for sure. We don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be and what role he'll play in building that run game. And when it comes to LaFleur and other things, will there be an offensive coordinator and a run game coordinator? Like all these things. I will say I do think Blake Corum and Kyren Williams have turned into a couple of pretty good backs. I don't think you're just taking ham and eggers necessarily and gaining those many yards. But what does that mean? Where does it go? I think in my opinion, every offense that's really good, even throwing the ball, can run the ball. I just think it's obvious at this point. Now, you may not have the all-star running back. Not every team has Bijan Robinson, let's say, but that doesn't mean you can't be super effective running the ball. And again, we're talking about teams that run the ball a lot of times, and they're not getting a boost from their quarterback, which I'm sure we'll talk about the quarterback at some point, but like the Rams are not getting any running yards from Matthew Stafford. So it's as the kids like to say, an ethical running game these days when it comes to the Rams.
I see. Okay. All right, so defensive coordinator is the top question. Offensive line coach, do we agree? Second most important question. O-line coach / run game coordinator, because LaFleur is going to have the passing game handled, I would say. And then after that, it keeps coming back. Everybody now, the quarterback question.
I got you, Paul.
Yeah. So did that question come up in the TV studio? We were not in there.
I mean, we talked about, the qualities that he's looking for in a quarterback. And like most head coaches, want someone who's going to be tough. And you got to be able to stay in the pocket and sustain some hits. That there's no secret of, there's not a coach in the NFL who wouldn't want those things. That's a big question mark, though, and that's not something that LaFleur is going to have an answer for on day one, especially without having a staff. But that those conversations have been had throughout this process. I mean, it was General Manager Monty Ossenfort who said a month ago that everything's on the table. That could mean that Kyler Murray's future is still in Arizona. That would include everything being on the table. he has a lot of qualities that I'm sure as an offensive-minded head coach, LaFleur is just, his mind is constantly going on what he can do with all of his new weapons.
So to the media in the press conference, he said that he reached out to Kyler Murray. There was a message, right? And then on the radio side, he elaborated a little bit more about Kyler, saying, I don't need to turn on the tape. I've seen plenty of him. I know, quote, he's a problem, end quote. He's a good player in this league. As for any sort of answers, nada.
Well, he was later on with Arizona Sports, and they asked him directly if Kyler was going to be the quarterback, and he's like, I'm not prepared to answer that right now, which is understandable. I mean, at one point when he was his kind of opening monologue, I guess, he kind of talked about how he was looking forward to like getting started on everything, and he really was. I mean, you show up last night with your family, you go over to the owner's house to kind of be welcome there. Now, he did say he talked a little football there, but I'm sure there was not a ton that night. And then you show up this morning, and all you're doing is meeting people you've never really met, or you haven't met a lot or talked to a lot, who you're going to be working with every day now. And then you've got all these media obligations at that point. So, yeah, you're not going to have – let's put it this way. When he's going through the interview process, there is a plan at quarterback.
Yeah.
He and Monty and the owner are all on the same page on the direction they want to go to quarterback. They clearly probably aren't going to talk a lot about it right now, but I think they already have an idea of a general direction. Now, what does that mean in terms of personnel? I don't know if they've come to that conclusion quite yet, but you know there's got to be a plan, because otherwise, why are you hiring the guy?
So in the absence of information, what do we get? Speculation. And some of us just have to step up and fill the void. So here we go. Break out your oven mitt. You guys ready for a hot take?
I was waiting to see if we'd get one today, Paul. Was not sure.
I didn't know it was appropriate. He's wearing the power blazer.
Look, there was a press conference today.
So
There's a new coach.
I didn't quite.
Dani's all dressed up. I felt like I needed to get dressed up.
Yeah.
That's true.
Why'd you laugh?
It's amazing is Darren is so fired up, and I don't see any coffee. So this is just natural adrenaline he's running on right now.
I had the coffee earlier when I was talking to Kurt Warner and Matt LaFleur.
Okay, so
I heard you were talking to Kurt Warner, actually. That's actually been going around the grapevine.
So
because I'm telling everybody.
So the oven mitt comes out because I'm going to speculate on the next quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals.
I'm nervous.
Someone who goes back a long way with Mike LaFleur, both in San Francisco, going to a Super Bowl together.
Oh, no, I think I know who you're going to say.
Once upon a time, in his very first start in the NFL, Week 1, 2016,
Brandon Williams!
He engineered a win against the Arizona Cardinals, which Bruce Arians later blamed the outcome of what was a disappointing season on Week 1 itself. Jimmy Garoppolo has been the backup quarterback for the Rams here as of late. His initials right now are UFA, unrestricted free agent.
Well, not quite
yet.
In March.
In March.
He's technically under contract.
Technically, his initials are RJG,
yes. But work with me. Work with me a little bit. Come the new league year, he'll be an unrestricted free agent, presuming they don't come to terms, and he made about $3 million plus last year for the Rams. So, what are the odds? ... Now, he is a year older than Jacoby Brissett. And as Craig Grialou tried to blow my take out of the water, as he's wont to do, so, well, what exactly is the difference between hanging on to Jacoby Brissett and adding Jimmy Garoppolo, for which I didn't have a really good answer other than familiarity, other than some coaches like to come in and they have their system, or at least the way they want to run their system, and they're really comfortable with a certain quarterback as being the player coach of the system, hashtag Drew Stanton, with Bruce Arians once upon a time. Just saying. Now, Jacoby Brissett's under contract for another year, so I'm kind of talking myself out of my own hot take. But Jimmy G, I mean, in the absence of Kyler Murray, in a really weak quarterback draft, if you want to force/waste a pick on a young quarterback, even the top of round 2 or top of round 3, could you have a pairing of Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy G?
We were told everything is on the table. So everything is going to be on the table. Once a decision either way is made, which, we should have an idea in the next month or so once the new league year starts. if it is Jacoby Brissett, when he was starting at the end of the year, this offensive line was decimated. The running backs room was decimated. It'll be a discussion of how different things can and should look with a healthy O-line and running backs room if Brissett is the quarterback next year.
Because once again, no offense threw more pass attempts than the Arizona Cardinals. No offense attempted less runs than the Arizona Cardinals. It was historically lopsided.
I'm surprised Brissett didn't need Tommy John surgery after the season ended.
That's right. I mean, even the starting center, Yelda Froholt, might have had some elbow issues from all the shotgun snaps, that went. So, yeah, that's a big question right there. What else am I missing from the big picture other than Darren talking with Kurt Warner? Did Kurt bring up anything, Darren,
I
that you
heard
wanted
he
to
talked to Kurt Warner.
Did you want to share anything else that Kurt Warner brought up?
No, I think I will keep that under wraps. It was a personal. We'll keep that between Kurt and myself.
Oh, really? Okay. So it was a high-level classified conversation as well.
But I was drinking coffee at the time, which is why I don't have one now.
I see. Okay. So, yeah, I'm looking here at what else stood out from, look, I thought you did a really good job in front of the media, having never been a head coach before. But then I reminded myself, well, he spent 2 years meeting the New York media.
That's true.
And when things got really sideways, the second half of his second season, they were 7-4, and then the bottom fell out. And if you go look at it, there are a lot of similarities to what happened to the Arizona Cardinals. They were the most injured team in the league. They had basically a shell of an offensive line.
I think 4 quarterbacks at one point.
Yeah, Zach Wilson, Mike White, and a bunch of other.
Mike White, that was Mike White Renaissance.
So if you go back and look at that.
Joe Flacco?
I mean, it hasn't.
Richard Todd? Sorry.
It hasn't been all rainbows and NFC championships with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. I mean, he endured a lot of adversity those 2 years with the Jets. And you notice when he talked about he knows what a good building looks like, and when the GM and the head coach are aligned, and he mentioned Les Snead and Sean McVay, he mentioned John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, I think it was noteworthy that he left out the Jets in every single example.
You picked up what he was throwing down.
He never mentioned the Jets within the confines of the Rams and the Niners and the DNA and sort of the organizational way in which they operate. So I thought that was definitely interesting. The other thing I took away and I bolded was getting ready for the Cardinals in Week 14. And yes, we've gone back to that game a couple of times. He cited how Matthew Stafford came into his office getting ready for the Cardinals. And obviously all you have to do is look at a team's record at that point, and it can be easy to dismiss an opponent. And for Matthew Stafford to come in and sort of, say to anybody rhetorically, hey, these guys can play. Because Stafford more than once in the last couple of years has actually, expressed some respect for the Cardinals defense. Now, it wasn't much of a challenge this year for a variety of reasons, but in 2024, obviously, Cardinals had their way in the first game, and then they were the helmet deflection away from completing a sweep of the Rams just 2 years ago.
And through the first half of last season, I mean, the Cardinals were in it in close games. That's what we were talking about week after week, is being in it until the very final drive. Now, by the time the Cardinals faced the Rams late in the season, bit of a different story for a list of reasons. But yeah, that defense made an impression on not just Stafford, but on Lafleur as well.
All right, so travel plans. Let's see here. Front burner, Darren, you're going to the Bay Area for the Super Bowl?
Yes, I am.
So instead of hobnobbing with one Hall of Famer by the name of Kurt Warner, it'll be soon-to-be Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald.
Fingers crossed. Okay. Fingers crossed. We'll know Thursday night if Larry is getting in, but I would feel you got to feel confident, right, Paul?
I would hope so.
There's been a lot of conversation over the last couple of weeks over who's getting in on a first ballot Hall of Fame. So,
well, we know who's not.
We certainly don't want to. We don't want to count any chickens prior to hatchation.
Bill Belichick.
Yeah. There are certain polarizing sports figures. Barry Bonds, as long as you're going to the Bay Area, right? And
go Devils.
But if there's one thing we can say about Fitz, I'm not sure there was a single media member he ever made an enemy of. Honestly, think about it. His dad was in the media.
Like, name somebody he made an enemy of, period.
Yeah. Well,
he could have blown up Richard Sherman that one time, Paul, and he didn't.
True. No, you're right. And he refused to engage Richard Sherman in the reindeer games of trash talking, and which really infuriated Richard Sherman even more.
Yes.
Because there's nothing you could do to tweak Larry and goad him into distracting him from his game.
That's also true.
So there's that. Okay, so, and then there's the possibility, of course, then you guys are going to the Combine, and then there's the possibility of an international game, perhaps.
Maybe.
Many possibilities.
There are, okay, break it down, Dani. So because Mexico City was added.
Yes.
Could be.
Yes. And the other cities are Melbourne, Rio, Munich, 3 games in London/UK, Madrid, and Paris. So the Saints are going to host a game in Paris, France, and the Cardinals play the Saints on the road next season. So if we're already crossing our fingers for Fitz.
We will ignore the fact that there's some relatively large French outlet that's reporting that it's going to be the Browns.
I did see that.
Why would you? I don't know if I should.
Danny's like, I want to go to Paris.
You're trying to grow the game internationally. The Browns are who you want to represent. I guess you do have a Pro Bowl quarterback. Shador Sanders.
We're going to let that go.
Yeah, I mean,
we're going to move on from that point. I did hear also that Ireland still could be in the mix for, so that would be, 10 if Ireland was in there? Because it's 8 here,
Yep.
plus Mexico is 9, and then Ireland would be 10. Now, I don't know if Ireland gets another one or if the Paris knocks it off this year, but...
We are getting close to the 16 international games per season that Roger Goodell envisions.
I mean, it would be hard to imagine, them not wanting maybe a Cardinals-Cowboys matchup in Mexico City of 2 organizations that have marketing rights and have a very large fan base down there.
We've been to Mexico before.
Okay,
so
either or. Would you rather go to Paris or Melbourne, Australia? Because the Rams are hosting in Australia. That could be on the radar.
Look, as someone who works for an NFL team, I'm fine with either. On a personal note, if I am flying across the globe to Australia, I would love for it to be on the Cardinals plane as opposed to a commercial flight. So if we're already going over there, I'd be okay with Australia.
Yeah, here on that one.
I'm not going to complain either way. I've been lucky enough to go to Paris once already. I've never been to Australia, so that would be kind of cool. But again, I will go where the schedule takes us, Paul. And so if that's Paris, if that's Mexico City, wherever we need to go. I do think it's interesting. Before, with all this going on today, the NFLPA had their press conference, their annual Super Bowl press conference, and the 18th game came up. And there's a lot of discussion that the 18th game is where the NFL wants to dovetail every team having an international game. I remember going to some NFL meetings at least a decade ago. Ironically, it was in Santa Clara. And we were at a restaurant that's built into the Levi Stadium for this mixer or whatever. And I ended up talking to some guy at the time, I don't know if he's still there, that was working in the NFL international realm for the league. And I remember him telling me at the time, it would be excellent, because at that time there were not 17 games, there were 16, that the NFL was thinking about going to 17 games, and then everybody would have 8 home games, 8 road games, and 1 international game, and then it would balance out. I don't know why you just can't do that. Now, I know why they want the 18th game. There's a whole different deal there going on.
Oh, yeah.
But 17 games with every team having an international game just balances out really well.
Yeah, more inventory, more TV contracts, more billions.
The other thing I liked about this guy's idea, now I don't think it's going to happen because they're finding all these international places to play, but at the time they were talking, one of the things said they were batting around was you'd have 16 international or 16 games that aren't home or away or aren't home games for regular NFL teams. So you'd have 8 international games, and then they put 8 games in like college towns, Lincoln, Nebraska, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, I don't think in today's college realm you would think that would go very well, but
yeah, the college game is already triggered enough by scheduling Saturday NFL games, so you're already cannibalizing a lot of the and college wants to expand its playoffs, and they did, and then a couple times they went against the NFL,
playoffs
and it didn't work out so well for them. By the way, speaking of the Super Bowl in Santa Clara, I have to say I laughed a hearty laugh when I saw that.
You can go ahead and do that hearty laugh if you want.
They had done the NFL Media Center at the Moscone Center.
Oh, yeah.
And then the media event that night at the McInerney Center. Okay, Tom McInerney. I always screw up his name. He's the former mayor of San Jose. That's the convention center in San Jose. That's a 2-hour commute at the very least.
Well,
what were they doing to the media? Why would they schedule one in San Francisco and the other in San Jose?
First of all, we know the San Jose Convention Center very well because our hotel is essentially connected to it when we go to on the 49ers road trip. I don't know. I don't know why that would be other than they couldn't find a spot to do it. Because again, that media day, that media night is supposed to not only have media, but they also let fans in. Now, I guess they couldn't take it. Were the Warriors playing home? Like, couldn't they do it at the Warriors facility? I don't know what the NBA schedule was.
No idea. I have no idea. But getting back to Australia, here's Dani.
Well, I've never been there, Paul, so I can't go back.
I don't know if we're getting cultured. Here's my favorite story of the week. Here's the headline. Some guy wins the Tour Down Under bike race after a crash caused, wait for it, by a kangaroo. And apparently this is a real problem that kangaroos love to jump out into traffic when they have these professional bike races where they're doing 30-plus miles per hour in the peloton. And kangaroos will come out. Kangaroos wiped out a half dozen professional
They're not the nicest
bikers.
animals.
No. And so this guy's quoted after winning saying, everyone asked me what's the most dangerous thing in Australia, and I always tell them it's the kangaroos. They wait and they hide in the bushes until you can't stop, and they jump out in front of you. Point proven today, because this guy took a full-blown header.
Are they trying to rob them? What exactly are they stopping these bicyclists for?
In this case,
for sport?
So in this case, they said 2 of them blasted right through the peloton. And they said they literally get out and zigzag in front of the bikers. This guy gave a play-by-play. He goes, the kangaroo went left, right, left, right, left, right, and then I ended up hitting its backside, flipped over. And unfortunately, there was a kangaroo who was injured and had to be taken to the local vet.
Okay, first of all, if you're going to go play in traffic, you don't get to complain about being injured, right, Mr. Kangaroo.
So it's always a disclaimer. There were no animals hurt in the filming of this movie. Well, unfortunately, during this bike race, the Tour Down Under, yes, a kangaroo did end up on the injured list.
Are we sure that kangaroo wasn't suicidal in some way?
You want to talk about an injury list, and we were talking about manifestation earlier. Well, Paul got his wish.
Here we go.
Yeah, you were manifesting Lindsey Vonn's injury. Remember when you were complaining?
What is that about?
You were complaining that she was still competing.
God.
We didn't have Getting Culture, but I couldn't let us go through this episode without it. You were complaining that she had not given up her Olympic dreams in her 40s.
My goodness
she had
gracious.
a nasty injury a couple of days ago, and I saw Tuesday morning she had reportedly ruptured her ACL, but will still compete at the Olympics.
Okay. That proves my point. That proves my point, does it not?
I hope you're happy.
So, first off, I wish no ill will on anyone except the 12s who don't deserve a Super Bowl victory. So that's why I'm going with the Patriots on Sunday. This all started because I had the Paulie Power Poll of sports figures that I'm so done with. And I called it up right here to refresh my own memory over here. Lane Kiffin, Ryan Clark, Carl Cheffers. The fact that we know Carl Cheffers' name is a problem. The fact that Carl is on a first-name basis with NFL fans, I don't know if he's getting paid by flag this year or what. And then on the watch list, we had Ben Johnson for taking his shirt off, Sam Levitt, because he's right there with Lane Kiffin at LSU. And then the other one we threw on there was Lindsey Vonn, who were in her 40s. She's still trying to compete in the downhill. I mean, even every 4 years it gets to be a little much. So we're not wishing ill will, but the fact that she's going to try and still compete with a leg brace and a fully blown ACL, okay. For what reason exactly? You're already highly decorated as an Olympian.
I'm going to sit here and say this. While I love the storyline of people going off with a storybook finish, I've always been somebody who says, if the athlete wants to be out there until the wheels fall off, or in this case, a leg.
Oh, jeez. How about a ski? Just say a ski fell off.
Whatever. I have a hard time saying if somebody's going to let you do it, you can't do it. Like the people saying, why doesn't LeBron just retire? Well, first of all, he's still averaging 25 points a game. But other than that, like, Who are we to say you should stop?
Here's the problem that I have, and it's a free country. You can play as long as you want. You can make yourself look as bad as you want.
It's still a free country?
What happens is, that's a different podcast, is there's a vacuum of media coverage that is sucked up by LeBron or Lindsey Vonn. So
There is not.
So when Lindsey Vonn was a 20-something up-and-coming phenom, and she would have gotten no media coverage if there would have been a 40-year-old Lindsey Vonn taking all the spotlight, just like LeBron takes all the spotlight from every other deserving Lakers player, other than Luka. But if you're an up-and-coming Lakers player, guess what? LeBron's the one who's still going to All-Star games.
You might find yourself on that list. Nowadays with social media, the fight for coverage is not what it used to be because everyone can market themselves.
I'm also going to take the tact that, I'm sorry, nobody quote unquote deserves media coverage. If you deserve playing time, if you want to say LeBron's taking somebody's playing time or Lindsey Vonn is taking somebody's spot that would be more effective because she's on a torn ACL, I can live with that argument. Nobody deserves media coverage.
No, what I'm saying was it's time for the media to cover a team or a sport or an event. Who are they asking for? They're asking for the name. And if the name is still hanging on because basically for the media coverage and the marketability so they can turn it into dollars.
So you're saying it's a better story?
I'm saying is if I was a younger athlete on the team, I wouldn't be so happy.
That's all.
That's it.
I do have another random question.
Here we go.
Okay.
So you know it's going to be good. I know that you are conspiracy Calvisi over there.
A little bit.
6 more weeks of winter. Do you believe the groundhog on Groundhog Day?
Do you believe
Absolutely not.
No?
No chance. No chance. In fact, they started a competing groundhog, Willie something, whatever.
I did not see this.
Yeah, there's a competing groundhog who.
Willie?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Puxatawny Phil and Willie.
it's capitalism at its finest. I got to look it up real quick.
You know what? That could be.
You know.
You might need to expand your mind beyond just dogs. Maybe just animals in general.
No,
you can
I'm
start
saying,
thinking of ways to scam people.
I mean, it might be a woodchuck. I don't know what it is, but
Willie the Woodchuck. I could see that.
By the way, you guys realize you're behind the
Ozempic
times.
for groundhogs.
With your phones, your Apple products, you're behind the times. Gemini is taking over the world, and all you have to do is look that up, just to let you guys know. You guys are lagging there with your devices. Sorry,
You
Dani.
and your AI.
You're lagging.
She's gonna bring up the pics again just because you decided to bring up AI. What are you doing
Can't
here?
spell Calvisi without AI.
Here we go. I think effective 2026, we need a little AI story of the week for Darren, and only Darren.
I almost said a bad word.
Here's
there.
an expert who says AI will supercharge sports teams' valuations going forward. As if sports teams aren't valuable enough, he says AI the rise of artificial intelligence is going to make live sports content more valuable than ever.
Great.
So let's say the Seahawks sell for $7 or $8 billion, just because everything else is going to be artificially generated, and there'll be no urgency. But live sports events will be appointment viewing, and basically be the only appointment viewing left.
Well, we're pretty close to that, anyways.
It's true. I can't argue against that. But there you go. That's your AI sports story of the week, Darren, because I know you look forward to that. Okay.
Jeez. So you're not staying out there for Super Bowl. You'll be flying back.
Yeah, we're flying back. I'm hoping Fitz gets in because we have some good stuff to cover with him 2 days if he gets in. If he doesn't get in, I guess we leave early. Let's not say anything. Maybe the bosses won't notice.
Okay, it's Willie the Groundhog.
Wait,
And
he's still a groundhog?
It's one of the famous, quote, weather predicting rodents that pop up every February 2nd.
How do they know that? How do you learn the first time that this
First
rodent
of all,
can predict
Willie, you couldn't
winter?
come up with a better.
There it is.
That's not even alliteration. You can't go
This-
with like D'Artagnan or something.
He's Canadian. It's the Canadian counterpart to Pennsylvania's Punxsutawney Phil. That's it. There you go.
But isn't there a problem because the sun is at a different
I
angle
feel
up
like
there?
we should take a field trip next year.
You know what? Willie the Groundhog, you know what he deserves? A tariff. You should put a tariff on Willie the Groundhog. That's what you should do. And I think that'll do it here on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.